Your mind has been working since before you opened your eyes this morning, before the first alarm, before the first thought you recognized as a thought. Some part of you was already processing, sorting through the residue of yesterday, preparing the machinery for today, running the quiet background operations that never fully stop. By the time you got out of bed, you had already been working for hours, and it continued through the morning routines and the conversations and the decisions, large and small, through the moments of waiting and the moments of rushing, through the meals you half tasted and the commutes you spent somewhere other than where your body was, through the afternoon and the evening and all the transitions between the different versions of yourself that different parts of the day required. And now you are here, in the dark, with a mind that has been running for somewhere between 16 and 18 hours, and that, despite everything, has not yet found the off switch. Because there is no off switch. This is the thing the ancient Zen masters understood that most modern approaches to sleep miss entirely. You cannot turn the mind off. You cannot force it into stillness through effort or technique, or the right sequence of instructions. The mind that is trying to stop thinking is a mind that is still thinking. About stopping thinking, what you can do is something different, something the monks in their mountain monasteries discovered over centuries of patient observation. You can give the mind something so complete, so unhurried, so fully present, that it stops reaching for the next thing. Not because you forced it to stop, but because for a moment, there is nothing it needs to reach for. That is what stories do. Not information, not instruction, not techniques to be remembered and applied. Stories arrive at the place where all the striving lives, and they offer it something it cannot refuse. A world that doesn't require anything of the listener except to be present in it. Tonight, there are 10 stories waiting. Each one a different quality of stillness. Each one a different door into the same room. The room where the Zen mind lives, where thinking dissolves into being, where the exhausted runner finally sits down, not because they've reached the destination, but because they've realized the running was never the point. Settle into wherever you are. Let the weight of your body become something you trust, rather than something you carry. Let your hands open if they've been closed. Let your face soften if it's been holding an expression for no one in particular. Take one breath that is entirely for this moment, and let the first story begin. Story 1. The Zen Master's Empty Schedule. Word had spread across the province that a certain Zen master had achieved something remarkable. Not enlightenment, which people assumed he had already, but something almost more impressive to the practical minds of the region's inhabitants. He always had time, not because he did less than other people. By any external measure, he did more. He oversaw a large monastery, received countless visitors, maintained an extensive correspondence, taught multiple groups of students at different levels of practice, and still somehow appeared, in every encounter, to have nowhere else he needed to be. People came from other monasteries to study this. A renowned teacher of organizational efficiency spent 3 weeks observing the master's daily operations and left more confused than when he arrived. He could not locate the source of the time. The master's schedule appeared as full as anyone else's. The hours were the same 24 that everyone received. But something was different. Finally, a student who had been with the master for 7 years and felt he had earned the right to a direct question asked it directly. Where does the time come from? Everyone I know runs out of it constantly. You never seem to. The master set down what he was working on and looked at the student with full attention, which was, the student had come to recognize, itself part of the answer, though he hadn't yet understood how. Tell me how you drink your tea in the morning, the master said. The student thought about it. I drink it while I'm going over what needs to happen in the day, he said. I find it's a good time to plan, while the mind is still fresh and the tea is... So you drink the planning, the master said, and the tea goes somewhere unnoticed. The student paused. When you eat, what do you do? I usually eat with others. We discuss whatever is... So you eat the discussing, and the food is fuel for a body you're not currently inhabiting. The student was quiet now. When you walk from here to the meditation hall, what happens? I think about the session, what I want to cover, whether the students have been... You think the walk and the path, which has something remarkable happening in the light at this hour of the morning, passes without a witness. The master picked up what he had been working on. I don't have more time than you, he said. I have the same time, but I am usually in it. He paused. When you drink your tea, you have the tea and the planning. That means you have half the tea and half the planning. When I drink my tea, I have the tea, completely. Then, when I plan, I have the planning, completely. I don't save time. I simply don't spend each moment on two things, which means each thing I do is done once instead of half done twice. He glanced up at the student. The mind that is always somewhere else never finishes being anywhere. And the mind that never finishes being anywhere, he looked back at his work, cannot rest, because rest requires being somewhere completely. The student went and drank his tea, just the tea. It was, he reported afterward, the best tea he could remember having. And somehow, inexplicably, given that he had spent the time doing nothing but drink it, afterward, he felt more ready for the day than he usually did after his morning planning session. He began to suspect that this was not a coincidence. How many places are you in right now? There's the body, here, in the dark, in whatever position you've settled into. And there's the mind. Where is it? Still in the day that ended? Already in the day that hasn't started? Somewhere in the middle distance of neither? This is an invitation to collect yourself. Not forcefully, not as a project, but as a simple choice, available right now, to be in one place instead of several. Here, in the dark, with this breath, with the weight of this body that has been carrying you all day. Just here. It takes nothing more than that, and it is the beginning of everything the rest of tonight can offer. Story 2. The painting that took 40 years. There was a painter in ancient China who was approached by a wealthy merchant with an unusual commission. I want a painting of a fish, the merchant said. The most perfect fish ever painted. I will pay whatever you ask. The painter considered the commission for a moment, and then named his price. It was extraordinary, more than most painters made in a decade of work. The merchant agreed without negotiating. He was wealthy, and he wanted the best. "When can I have it?" he asked. "Come back in 40 years," said the painter. The merchant was taken aback. But the painter's reputation was beyond question, and the merchant was a patient man in his own right. He agreed. He came back in 40 years. He was an old man by then. The painter was older, white-haired, hands slightly trembling, but with eyes that had a quality the merchant had not noticed in their first meeting, a depth that had not been there, or perhaps had been there, and he had been too young and too busy to see. The painter led him to a table, set out brushes and ink and a fresh sheet of paper, and in a period of approximately 4 minutes, painted a fish. It was extraordinary. That much was immediately obvious, even to the merchant, who was no expert in painting. There was something about the fish that made it seem not like a representation of a fish, but like the idea of a fish, the essence of fishness, the thing that all fish were trying to be, and that this painting had somehow captured directly. "This is remarkable," the merchant said. "But I have to ask, I paid for 40 years of your time, and you painted it in 4 minutes. I'm not complaining. The painting is everything I hoped for. But what happened in the 40 years?
I'm intrigued by your technique.
The painter led him to another room.
Unlike any I have seen.
Every surface was
It
covered
is
in
an old
paintings of
method,
fish,
requiring
thousands of
patience
them,
and the finest pigments.
tens of thousands,
To see clearly,
fish
my
in every
friend,
style,
you
every
must
angle,
first
every
learn to
possible
look
treatment.
with your heart,
Fish that were
not
too
just
careful,
your eyes.
and fish that were too loose. Fish that missed something essential, and fish that were close, but not quite. Fish that revealed, in their falling short, exactly what the perfect fish required. "The 40 years," said the painter, "are in the 4 minutes. The 4 minutes are the 40 years. There is no difference between them. All of it was the painting. The ones that came before made the one you commissioned possible. And if you had asked me to do it in 4 minutes 40 years ago," he gestured at the room, "you would have had a very different fish. There is something in you that has been in preparation for this night. Every night you have moved through, the easy ones and the difficult ones, the nights you slept well and the nights you didn't, the nights something shifted and the nights nothing seemed to. All of it has been the preparation. The 40 years are in the 4 minutes. The rest that comes tonight arrives carrying everything that came before it. Every night, you learn to let go a little more. Every morning you arrived at, changed in ways too small to measure, but real.
It is as
Tonight
if the
is the
rain
4 minutes.
itself
Let it be
pauses
what
to
40 years
watch
of
you
nights have been
work.
building toward. The fish is already inside the brush. Rest is already inside you. Let it appear. Story 3. The monk who forgot to worry. There was once a monk who was so cheerful and so at ease that the other monks eventually became curious enough to ask him directly about it. Not his happiness exactly. There were happy monks, but his specific quality of ease, the absence of the low-grade tension that most people carry, the background hum of unprocessed worry that sits beneath even happy moments like a television left on in another room. He didn't have it. How? One of the more anxious monks finally asked him, somewhat desperately. How do you not worry? There is so much to worry
In the
about.
quiet of the temple,
The cheerful
wisdom of a
monk thought about this
lifetime flows
seriously.
through these hands,
I do
guided by the
worry,
brush,
he said
listening
finally.
to the rain.
Sometimes. When? When there is something I can do about whatever I'm worried about. The anxious monk waited. That's the whole answer? That's the whole answer. But what about all the things you can't do anything about? Don't they worry you? They used to, said the cheerful monk. But I noticed something. When I worried about things I couldn't affect, the worrying didn't change the things. It only changed me. It made me less capable, less present, less able to address the things I actually could affect. So worrying about what I couldn't change wasn't even useful as preparation for dealing with what I could. It was just waste. But how do you stop? Asked the anxious monk. Once I start worrying, I can't just decide to stop. Neither can I, said the cheerful monk agreeably. I don't stop the worry, I ask it a question. What question? Is there something I can do about this right now, in this moment? And if there is, I do it, and the worry goes because its job is done. And if there isn't, then I tell the worry that I've heard it, I've noted what it's pointing at, and I'll return to it when there's something to be done. And then I do whatever I'm doing, and usually the worry, having been heard and given a future appointment, is satisfied enough to quiet down. The anxious monk tried this that afternoon. A worry arose about a letter he was expecting that had not arrived, about what the absence of the letter might mean, about several cascading possibilities branching from that absence. He asked the question, is there something I can do about this right now? There wasn't. The letter would arrive, or it wouldn't. Nothing he could do in this moment would change that. He told the worry he'd heard it, that he would address it when there was something to address. The worry, somewhat to his surprise, quieted. Not completely, but enough that the afternoon passed differently than it would have otherwise. Enough that the background television went from loud to low. Enough that the evening meditation was the best he'd had in weeks.
True serenity
And
is not
the letter
found in
arrived the next
absence of
morning,
noise,
containing nothing alarming,
but in the stillness of the
as
heart.
most things that are worried about turn out to contain. There may be worries present right now, things that arrived with you into this night and haven't yet found a place to put themselves down. Try the question for each worry that makes itself known. Is there something you can do about this right now, in this moment, in the dark? If there is, notice it. Hold it for tomorrow.
Observe how the
Give it an
smoke
appointment.
rises effortlessly.
The first moment of the morning when
We
action is
too can
possible,
release our
it will be there
burdens with the
waiting.
Same gentle ease.
If there isn't, and most of what visits in the night falls into this category, then it has been heard. It has been acknowledged. It doesn't need to keep announcing itself. It can rest. And you, having given the worries their appointments, can rest too. Tomorrow is for doing. Tonight is for being. You have made it this far. Let that be enough for now. Story 4. The student
rain
who learned to
washes
fall.
away the day's worries.
There was a martial arts teacher
leaving
who
only
was
the
known for an
stillness
unusual
of the
approach to
present
teaching
moment.
beginners. Before he taught any technique, any strike or block or position, he spent weeks teaching new students how to fall. Not the dramatic
Gentle
falls of an
steam
advanced
rises,
practitioner,
a
just the
reminder
basic,
to embrace
ordinary
the
falls that
stillness
happen
within the
when a
storm.
person loses their balance, which in the early stages of training happens frequently. How to let the body meet the ground without fighting the ground.
As the rain falls,
How to relax into the
sweeping
fall
continues,
rather than stiffening against
a
it.
reminder that even in the
How to
storm,
make the
there
impact
is
as small
balance.
as possible by not resisting the motion. The new students found this frustrating. They had come to learn to fight, not to fall.
Each drop a thought.
They
branching
wanted
out
the
into
impressive
calm
techniques.
expanse.
The
The
falling
darkness
practice
holds
seemed to be the
light as
opposite of what they
ripples
had come for.
intersect. Listen to the rain.
A student who had been training
is
elsewhere
cleansing the
and came to
spirit.
study with this teacher
We
was
find
particularly
peace in the
vocal about his
stillness within the
frustration.
storm.
Other teachers don't
box
spend this
remains
long on
empty.
falling,
A
he said.
space for what is yet to come.
Can we move to the real training?
The rain cleanses the
The
garden
teacher looked at him
outside.
with an expression that was neither
Everything is
unkind
as
nor
it should
apologetic.
be.
Show me your
Let the
falls,
sounds
he
of
said.
the rain wash away
The
your
student
worries.
demonstrated.
Tranquility
His
is
falls
found
were what
not
you
in
might
the
expect from
absence of
someone trained
sound,
elsewhere,
but in the
technically
harmony
functional,
of the rain,
but
the
effortful.
wood, and the breath.
You could see the resistance in them, the body bracing slightly against the impact, the small struggle against the motion. Now watch, said the teacher. He fell, not dramatically, just as if he had tripped on something slight, and the fall was so fluid, so without resistance, that it took the student a moment to realize he was looking at mastery rather than an accident. The person who cannot fall, said the teacher, standing up with the same ease, is always fighting two things: the opponent in front of them and the ground beneath them. They are using half their energy maintaining a
Let the
relationship
rain
with the
wash
ground that is
away your
adversarial.
worries.
He looked at the
Find
student.
peace in the stillness of the
The
flame.
person who has made peace with falling has only one thing to deal with, and twice the energy to deal with it. The student practiced falling for 3 more weeks, and discovered, at the end of those weeks, that something had changed. Not just in his ability to fall without injury, though that too, but in his overall relationship to the training. A quality of ease had entered that hadn't been there before, a willingness to be in motion without controlling every aspect of the motion, a trust in the ground that freed him from the constant low-level effort of fighting it. His technique improved in those 3 weeks more than it had in years of previous training. Not because he had learned anything new about technique, because he had stopped fighting the ground. Sleep is the fall, not a defeat, not a failure of consciousness, a release into something that will hold you, has always held you, every time you have ever trusted it enough to let go. The ground is there. It has been there every night of your life. Every night you have ever fallen asleep. The ground was there, and you were held, and you woke in the morning to a day you couldn't have predicted. You know how to fall. You have done it thousands of times. What gets in the way is not the falling. It is the fighting of the falling, the body that braces slightly, the mind that holds slightly, the part of you that is still managing, still monitoring, still maintaining a relationship with consciousness that is slightly adversarial. You can stop fighting the ground. Let the fall happen. The ground is there. It has always been there. Trust it one more time. Story 5. The Night Garden. There was a monastery with a garden that was famous by day. Visitors came from far away to walk through it, to sit in its carefully composed spaces, to be in the presence of something that felt, despite being entirely human-made, entirely natural. But the monks who lived there knew something that visitors rarely discovered. The garden was different at night, not just darker, different. In the day, the garden was a place you went to appreciate. You stood where the view was best. You sat on the bench that commanded the widest angle of the pond. You walked the paths that the designer had intended. You experienced the garden as an arrangement, a composition, something made for a particular effect. at night, with the deliberate compositions invisible, something else became apparent. The sounds the garden made on its own. The frog that lived in the pond, whose voice was inaudible in the day, but became, in the silence of the night, a whole world. The wind through different trees making different sounds. The bamboo grove a high whisper. The ancient cedar a low sustained note. The maple a dry rattling like a quiet percussion section. The insects that had been too small to notice when there were flowers and paths and carefully placed stones to look at. There was a monk who could not sleep, who began spending his sleepless nights in the garden, not to walk it or to sit in the composed spaces, but to lie down in the grass in the less managed section at the edge and simply be there. He had been spending his sleepless nights fighting the sleeplessness, lying in his room trying to force sleep, frustrated by its absence, watching the hours pass with growing anxiety. This had been happening for months. In the garden, it was different. He didn't sleep immediately. Sleep wasn't why he went. He went because he had run out of energy to fight the wakefulness indoors and needed somewhere to put the restlessness that had too much space in his room. And in the garden, the restlessness had somewhere to go. It went into the frog's voice, and the wind in the bamboo, and the smell of the earth at night, which is a completely different smell than the earth by day. It went into the particular quality of darkness under clouds versus darkness under stars. It went into the sensory world that was waiting outside his room, enormous and indifferent, and somehow, in its indifference, exactly what was needed. He began sleeping in the garden on the warmer nights. Not every night. Not as a cure for the insomnia, which some nights remained, but often enough that his relationship to the sleepless nights changed. They were no longer prison. They were doorways into a version of the world that daylight obscured. And with that change of relationship, the sleeplessness lost its grip. Not because it stopped, but because it stopped being the enemy and the thing that had been keeping him awake, the resistance to being awake at the wrong time, removed. The wakefulness had nothing to sustain it. He slept, often in the grass, under whichever sky the night had chosen to offer. You are in your own night garden right now. Perhaps it doesn't feel like a garden. Perhaps it feels like the inside of a dark room with a mind that won't cooperate. But there are things present in this moment that the day obscures. The quality of quiet that exists nowhere else. The particular way your body feels when it is horizontal and held. The sound of your own breath, which is so constant during the day that you never hear it, but which in this quiet becomes audible, becomes real, becomes something that has been accompanying you through everything. The night is not an obstacle. It is a different version of the world, enormous, patient, indifferent in the best sense, not needing you to do anything with it, not asking you to appreciate or analyze or remember it, just asking you to be in it. You are already here. That is enough. Story. 6. The Master and the Diamond. A student came to a Zen master with a question he had been carrying for years. My mind, he said, feels like a diamond. Hard. Faceted. Every surface reflects something. When I sit in meditation, I don't experience stillness. I experience 1,000 reflections of everything around me. Every thought generates 10 more thoughts. Every attempt to quiet the mind generates thoughts about the quieting. It never stops. It never softens. The master listened carefully. "Is a diamond useful?" he asked. "For some things, for cutting, for enduring." "And what is water useful for?" "For drinking, for growing things, for..." The student paused. "For finding its own level, for taking the shape of whatever contains it." "A diamond," said the master, "is water that was put under tremendous pressure for a very long time. The diamond is not a different substance from water. It is water that learned to be extremely hard in response to extreme conditions." The student was quiet. "The mind that will not soften," the master continued, "is not a different kind of mind from the mind that rests easily. It is a mind that learned under pressure that hardness was necessary, that the reflective surfaces were protection, that keeping everything moving and accounted for was the way to stay safe." "So, what do I do?" the student asked. "What does pressure do to a diamond?" "It made it." "What does the removal of pressure do?" the student thought. Over enough time, it could return to another state. Not water, perhaps, but something less rigid. "The mind under pressure becomes rigid," the master said. "The mind given safety, given genuine rest, given night after night of actual release rather than managed recovery, that mind begins, over time, to soften, not to become weak, to become more like water, to take the shape of the container rather than insisting on its own shape." "How long does it take?" "That depends on how long it was under pressure," said the master. "But it begins the first night you let it begin. The first night you give it actual rest rather than the performance of rest." The student went home and, for the first time in years, genuinely tried to stop performing rest and actually rest. It didn't work entirely. The diamond doesn't become water in one night. But something infinitesimal shifted. One facet, briefly, reflecting not the outside world, but the inside one. Something that had been pointing outward turned, for just a moment, inward. And in that moment, in the space opened by that one softened facet, something like peace arrived. Brief, provisional, but real. And real is where everything begins. Your mind may be a diamond right now, hard-edged and reflective, every surface catching something, the stillness you're looking for, bouncing off the facets and scattering before it can settle. That's all right. The diamond is not broken. The diamond is what it learned to be. But the pressure that made it, that pressure is not present right now. Right now, there is no emergency. There is nothing that requires the hardness. There is nothing that the reflective surfaces need to be protecting against. It's possible that the mind doesn't know this yet. It's possible that it's still acting as if the pressure were present when it isn't. You can tell it, gently, that it's safe to begin softening. Not completely. Not tonight, but one facet. One surface that stops reflecting outward and turns, just slightly, toward the quiet inside. That's all it takes to begin. Story: The monk and the migration. Every autumn, a monk who lived near the coast would climb to a high point above the monastery and watch the birds migrate. It was not a sanctioned practice. It wasn't in any teaching or schedule. He did it because something about the migration moved something in him that the formal practice didn't reach. something pre-verbal, preconceptual, older than any tradition. He would stand there for hours, watching formation after formation cross the sky above him, thousands of birds moving as one organism, each individual adjusting constantly to maintain the shape of the whole responding to something that none of the individuals could see from their position inside it. A younger monk climbed up one year and stood beside him. "What are you looking for?" the younger monk asked, watching the formations pass. "Nothing," said the older monk. "Then what are you doing?" "Watching." "What's the difference?" The older monk was quiet for a moment. When you look for something, you bring the shape of what you're looking for with you. You hold it up against what you see and check whether it matches. Whatever doesn't match gets discarded. You end up seeing only confirmation or refutation of the shape you brought. Another formation passed overhead. Both monks watched it. When you watch, you bring nothing. You let the thing in front of you have its own shape. You don't hold anything up against it. You just receive it, whatever it is. The younger monk looked at the birds. "And what do you receive?" he asked. "When you watch like that?" The older monk thought about this for a long moment. "The sense that there are things happening at a scale I am not the center of," he said. "That the world is enormously, continuously busy with processes that have nothing to do with me, and that will continue long after I am gone, and that this is..." He paused, as if the word surprised him when it arrived. A relief. The younger monk looked at the sky, which was still full of formations, wave after wave of birds moving in their ancient seasonal rhythm, and felt, for the first time in a long time, small, in a way that was not diminishing. Small, the way a grain of sand is small on a beach. Part of something vast, belonging to something that extends in every direction, far beyond what can be seen. Not lost, not insignificant. Simply, one part of something that was there before and will be there after, moving in its own enormous patterns, not requiring him to understand it, or manage it, or be responsible for it. Just belonging to it. The way everything belongs to something larger than itself. The world is doing something right now that has nothing to do with you. The sky is moving through its nightly processes. The stars are completing arcs that have been running for billions of years. The ground beneath the building you're in is doing what ground does. Living things in every time zone are sleeping or waking, moving through their own rhythms, belonging to patterns that intersect with yours, and then continue past you into distances you'll never reach. You are part of this. One small part of an enormous ongoing thing. And being one small part of an enormous ongoing thing means, tonight, that you don't have to be everything. You don't have to manage the whole. You are not the center without which it cannot continue. The migration continues whether you watch it or not. Let yourself be a grain of sand on the beach tonight. Belonging, present, small in the way that is restful rather than diminishing. Part of the whole, at rest, within it. Story 8. The conversation that already ended. There was a student who, after an argument with a fellow student, found that the argument would not leave him. Not because it was still happening. It had ended hours ago, concluded without resolution, but concluded nonetheless, both parties going their separate ways. but
as the gentle
it lived in
rain
his mind
whispers
with a
across
persistence
the
that the
dark
actual
stone.
argument hadn't had. In his mind, it was sharper, more urgent, more emotionally charged than the real version had managed to be. He went over it endlessly, revised what he'd said, composed the responses he wished he'd given, imagined the version in which he'd been clearer, more articulate, more persuasive, felt the frustration of the version that had actually happened,
In the quiet of
the one
night,
where he'd been less articulate
the
than he'd
world
wanted,
outside moves softly.
where he'd made points that hadn't landed, where the other person had said things he couldn't immediately answer. That night, unable to sleep, he went to the master. The master was not asleep. He was often awake late, which the students had never been able to decide was a function of enlightenment or insomnia. He listened to the student describe the argument. How long did the argument last? The master asked. Perhaps 20 minutes. And how long have you been having it since then?
So too must the
The
soul.
student paused.
The mist hides the
Several
hollow,
hours.
but the light remains.
So, the argument your fellow student was actually present for lasted 20 minutes. The argument you have been having with yourself has lasted several hours. The master looked at him calmly. Which argument caused more disturbance? The one I'm having with myself, the student admitted. And your fellow student. Is he having this argument with himself right now? The student considered this. He honestly didn't know. It was possible. It was also possible that the fellow student had had dinner, attended evening practice, and gone to sleep without further thought of the matter. I don't know, he said. So it's possible, said the master, that you are in an argument alone, that your opponent left hours ago and you are still fighting. The student was quiet. The argument outside, the master said, involved two people
When
and is
we
over.
embrace the present moment,
The argument
the
inside
boundaries
involves
between
only one
ourselves and the
and
infinite
continues because you
simply
keep
dissolve
continuing
like
it.
the morning
You are
mist.
both the combatants in that argument, which means you are also the one who can end it. How? By recognizing that the conversation is over, not resolved. Over. There is a difference. Many conversations end without resolution. They are still over. The people are still done speaking. The next conversation, if there is one, will happen in its own time. But this one, the real one, the one with words that passed between two actual people, that one is done. The student sat with this. The argument in your mind, the master continued, is not a continuation of the real argument. It is a new thing you have created. A play in which you perform both parts. And like any play, it continues as long as the performers are willing to perform. He looked at the student kindly. You can lower the curtain. The student went back to his room. He didn't immediately stop the argument. The mind doesn't obey direct orders. But he changed his relationship to it. Each time it resumed, he reminded himself, this is the play. The real conversation is over. The curtain can come down. Over the course of that night, the performance gradually lost its audience. By morning, it was quiet, and the actual fellow student encountered at breakfast turned out to be perfectly ordinary, neither an opponent nor a resolved friend, but simply a person eating breakfast who had had a disagreement with someone yesterday
washing
and had
away
moved
the
on,
dust of the world.
as people
The
do
blossoms remind us of
as
the
things
beauty of
do.
impermanence.
when you let them. There may be a conversation in your mind right now that ended hours ago in the world, a play that is still running
Bathed
after the
in
theater has
indigo and
closed.
gold, the temple
You can let it
rests
run,
upon the
or
ridge,
you can notice that
a
you are both
silent
the
sentinel
performers
above the
and the
rolling sea
audience,
of night mist.
and decide that tonight you are not available for the performance. The conversation is over. The people who were in it have moved on.
Returns to the earth,
Whatever needs to happen next,
finding peace
the
in
resolution,
silence
the follow-up,
between sounds.
the conversation that might happen tomorrow, that can happen tomorrow. Tonight, there is only this room, this quiet, this body that would very much like to stop being a theater for arguments that have already ended elsewhere. Lower the curtain. The play is done. Rest is waiting in the silence it leaves
Listen
behind.
closely to the sound
Story.
of the bamboo. A gentle
9.
reminder
The Master
of
and the
nature's
Full
rhythm.
Moon. Once a year, on the night of the
We
full
are
moon,
one
the
with
master of a mountain
mist,
monastery would invite all the
the
students to come
trees,
outside and simply look at the
and
moon together.
light.
No teaching, no discussion, no formal sitting posture. They would come out, stand or sit as they wished, and look at the moon together for as long as it held them. New students were often puzzled by this. They had come to study, to practice, to progress in understanding. Looking at the moon together seemed insufficient. A pleasant activity, certainly, but not the rigorous thing they'd been expecting. A student in his first year asked the master, the morning after such an evening, what the purpose had been. The moon was there, the master said. I understand that. But what were we supposed to learn from looking at it? What did you notice? The master asked. The student thought back. He had noticed the brightness. Surprising, how much light a full moon cast. Enough to see colors faintly. Enough to read by if you were patient. He had noticed how the monastery looked differently in that light. The familiar buildings become something slightly unfamiliar. The shadows falling at angles that changed all the proportions. He had noticed the silence, not the absence of sound, but the quality of the silence, which seemed larger than ordinary silence, seemed to extend further. And he had noticed, at some point, that he couldn't precisely locate, that he had stopped thinking about what he was supposed to be learning from looking at the moon.
Stillness of the night,
He told the master all of
illuminated by
this.
humble light,
The master
we
nodded.
find peace.
When did you stop thinking about what you were supposed to learn? He asked. I'm not sure. Sometime after we'd been standing there a while. And
Listening
when
to
you
the
stopped
rain
thinking about what you were
fall on
supposed to
the
learn,
gravel reminds
what
me of
happened?
the stillness within.
the student went back to the memory.
The
What had happened
silver
was
smoke twists, a
nothing.
delicate path from the
Or rather,
ember's warmth into
the moon.
cool darkness of
Just the
temple.
moon, for a while, without the activity of the self that was observing the moon and trying to extract meaning from the observing. The moon was just the moon, he said slowly. And you, said the master, were just you, not the student trying to learn from the moon,
Every step
just a
is
person
meditation.
standing in the dark,
Listen
looking
to
at a
the
light in the
rhythm of
sky
the rain
for no
and the
reason
wood.
and with no agenda. He looked at the student. When is the last time you were just you, not the student, not the practitioner, not the person trying to improve and understand and
listening
become,
Requires the
just a
stillness
person
of the
somewhere
mind.
with something happening nearby?
rain
The student
falls
couldn't
whether we
immediately
notice it
answer.
or not.
That,
True stillness
said
is
the
found
master,
not in the absence
is
of
what the
sound,
full moon
but
is
in the
for,
peace within the
not to
sound.
teach, to provide an occasion for a self to briefly disappear, and in the disappearing, to rest. Tonight, there is something for you to look
I
at,
have meditated as
in the same
instructed,
spirit.
Master,
not the moon.
yet I still struggle
You
to
may not
find
be
the
able to see
stillness
it from where you
desire.
are, but the dark has its own quality of presence if you look at it in the right way. Not looking for something in the dark, not trying to see through it, or beyond it, or make something of it. Just looking at it the way you might look at a full moon, with a quality of attention that is open rather than searching, receiving rather than extracting. The dark is there. You are here. For a moment, that can be all there is. Not the person who needs to sleep, not the person who has a day tomorrow, just a person in the dark, with the dark happening nearby, for no particular reason. In the disappearing of everything else, something restful arrives. Let it arrive. Story 10. The final story. The bridge between days. There was a very old monk who was known in his final years for a teaching. He gave not in formal settings, but in casual conversations, in the garden, at meals, in the quiet moments between the structured parts of the day. The teaching was this: the night is not an interruption in the story. It is a necessary passage between chapters. He came to this understanding, he said, not through philosophical study, but through simple attention to his own experience over many decades. He noticed that the self who went to sleep was never quite the same as the self who woke up, not dramatically different, but changed in ways too subtle to describe, in ways that accumulated over years into something that looked nothing like what he had been at the beginning. And the change, he came to believe, happened in the night, not through dreams necessarily, though dreams were part of it, not through any process he could trace or describe, but through the simple fact of stopping, of releasing fully and completely the version of himself that the day had required, and being remade in the dark into whoever the next day would need. We talk about the self, he would say, as if it were something fixed, a vessel that moves through time, accumulating experiences, but remaining essentially itself. But I don't think that's what I've observed. What I've observed is more like he would search for the right image, more like a flame that is continuously consuming itself and being continuously renewed. The flame you see at any given moment is not the same matter as the flame you saw a moment ago. Everything has been converted and remade. The continuity is real. It's still the same flame, still in the same place. But the substance is entirely new. The night, he would say, is where the conversion happens. The old matter goes, the new matter comes. And what bridges them, what maintains the continuity that makes you the same person who went to sleep and the same person who wakes up, is something that doesn't sleep, something underneath the self that needs rest, something that watches the flame be consumed and renewed without needing to be consumed or renewed itself. He never named this something. He said that naming it was the surest way to miss it. But he said that everyone who had ever gone to sleep and woken up had experienced it, had crossed the bridge, had been, for some hours, in the space between chapters, and that there was nothing to fear there, that the space between chapters was not empty, that it was, in fact. And he would smile when he said this, in the way of someone who has discovered that the most important truths are also the simplest ones, full of whatever the next chapter would need, full of whoever the next day was asking you to become, full of the quiet that the noise of the day left no room for, but that was always there, waiting, in the bridge between the days. You are on the bridge now. The chapter that was today is complete. It was full of whatever it was full of, the remarkable and the ordinary, the moments that mattered and the moments that seemed not to, the things you did and the things done to you, and the things that simply happened in your proximity and passed through your life without staying. It is complete. You can release it. The conversion is already happening. The new matter is already forming. Whatever the next chapter needs, whatever the day that is coming has been arranged to ask of you, it is being prepared in the space between, in the bridge that you are crossing right now, in these quiet hours that feel like nothing, but are, in fact, everything. Rest now. Not because you've finished, not because you've earned it, but because the bridge requires crossing. And the crossing requires you to stop standing in the middle of the chapter that's behind you and simply walk, step by step, breath by breath, into the space between, into the full quiet, into the night that is not absence, but a different kind of presence, into whoever you will be when the next chapter begins. You are already walking. The bridge is holding. Good night. There is a quality to the Zen mind that is difficult to describe in words, which is perhaps why the Zen tradition has always preferred stories to explanations. The Zen masters noticed that explanation creates distance. When you explain something, you put it into a category, give it a label, locate it in relation to other things that already have labels and categories. The thing becomes known, organized, manageable. And in becoming known and manageable, it also becomes slightly, subtly, further away. But a story does something different. A story arrives before the explaining mind has a chance to categorize it. It slips in under the fence of understanding and lands somewhere deeper, in the part of you that knows things not because you've been told them, but because something in you recognizes them when they appear. Every story you've heard tonight has been trying to reach that place, not to teach you something new, to remind you of something that has always been true, and that the noise of the day makes temporarily invisible. That you are not only the self that is tired, you are also the depth of the lake that the tiredness never reaches. That you are not only the mind that won't stop, you are also the awareness within which the mind's activity takes place, the space in which the thoughts arise and pass, which is itself neither arising nor passing. The Zen masters had many names for this. None of them were quite right, because none of them could be quite right. You can't put the sky in a box, and you can't put what they were pointing at into words, but you can point. And all the stories of tonight have been pointing. Here is where they point. There is something in you that has been present through every moment of this day, through the morning, through the rush, through the conversations and the decisions and the moments of frustration and the moments of unexpected grace, through the afternoon, through whatever that held, through the evening, through the transition to night, through the lying down, and the mind that kept going for a while after the body stopped. Something was present through all of it, watching in the way that clear water watches everything that moves through it without being disturbed by the movement, not judging, not recording in the way a camera records with the intention of review, just present, aware. The background hum of awareness that is so constant and so quiet that you rarely notice it against the foreground noise of all the things it's aware of. That is the Zen mind, not something to achieve, not a state to enter, not the reward for sufficient
Observe
practice
the
or sufficient
spiral of
understanding.
steam.
The simple, continuous,
Let the
undramatic fact
warmth
of awareness
center
itself,
you.
which is here, right now, which has been here all day, which will be here through the night, which has been here for as long as there has been a you to be aware of anything. You don't need to find it. You are already in it. You have never been anywhere else. The mind that is exhausted tonight is the thinking mind. The mind that analyzes and plans and reviews and anticipates. The mind that runs the dialogues and manages the relationships and keeps track of everything that needs to be tracked. That mind is genuinely tired. It has done an enormous amount of work today, and it needs the rest that is coming. But there is another mind, the one the Zen masters were pointing at, the one that is aware of the thinking mind without being the thinking mind, the one that watches the arguments and the plans and the worries arise and pass without being any of them. That mind is not tired. That mind does not get tired because it doesn't do anything. It simply is. It is the sky within which the weather of the thinking mind moves. And the sky is unchanged by the weather. You can rest in that mind tonight. Not by finding it. You can't find the sky by looking for it. Because the sky is what you're looking inside when you look for anything at all. But by letting the thinking mind do what it's trying to do right now, slow down, stop generating, return to the quiet that was always beneath the generation, and discover that the quiet was not an absence. It was home. Let everything that was today be today. It was what it was, complete in all its incompleteness, full of exactly what it was full of. Not the day you might have planned, but the day that happened, which is the only kind of day there ever is. You moved through it. You are on the other side of it now. The bridge the old monk spoke of is beneath your feet. And the crossing requires only one thing, the willingness to stop looking back at the chapter that is finished, and to simply walk forward into the space that exists between where you have been and where you are going. That space is the night. That space is the Zen mind. That space is yours, right now, completely and without any conditions. The only thing that was ever between you and it was the belief that you needed to be somewhere else first. You don't. You are already here. The thinking mind can sleep now. The awareness that was never tired can hold the night. And in the morning, when the thinking mind wakes again, as it will, as it always does, ready for the next chapter, it will find that something has been restored, not fixed, not changed, but restored to the depth that the day's stones never reached, to the quietness of the water beneath all weather, to the flame briefly consumed, newly made, continuous across the dark passage of the night. Rest now. The awareness is holding everything. You don't need to hold anything. Good night. One last thing. And then, silence. Somewhere right now, on the other side of the world, someone is waking up, opening their eyes in a morning you haven't reached yet, beginning the day that for them is new, while for you, it's still this night, this quiet, this particular darkness. And somewhere else, Someone is right where you are, in the middle of the night, in the space between days, in the borderland that this moment occupies. You are not alone in this. You have never been alone in this. The night has always held people, has been holding people since before there were words for night, or people has been the space between the chapters for as long as there have been chapters, which is to say, for as long as there have been lives being lived, in all their ordinary, extraordinary completeness. You are one of those lives. In this night, in this particular moment of the ongoing human story, held by the dark, the way all the others have been held, crossing the bridge the way all the others have crossed it, and waking as they have woken into whatever is next. It is enough. You are enough. Good night. The Zen tradition has a concept that translates roughly as beginner's mind. It refers to the quality of attention that a genuine beginner brings to something new, open, unencumbered by what it already knows, genuinely available to receive what the experience offers, rather than filtered through the accumulated categories of prior knowledge. The Zen masters observed that this quality of attention, so natural in children, so rare in adults, was not actually the property of beginners. It was the property of the mind that had been emptied. And emptying, they found, was something that could be practiced, not forced, not manufactured, but created the conditions for. Sleep is one of the great emptying practices. Not because the sleeping mind is empty, dreams suggest otherwise, but because sleep interrupts the accumulation. The day piles things up, judgments and interpretations and decisions and habits, and the 1,000 small solidifications of identity that happen every time you respond to something in the same way you responded to it before. Sleep sweeps some of this away. Not all of it. You wake up recognizably yourself, but refreshed. The categories slightly less rigid, the interpretations slightly less fixed, the identity slightly more available for revision than it was when you lay down. This is why, in many traditions, the advice for difficult problems is to sleep on it, not as a delaying tactic, as a genuine strategy, because the mind that approaches the problem after sleep is different from the mind that put the problem down the night before. Slightly emptied, slightly more like a beginner, slightly more open to seeing what is actually there rather than what it expected to see. You are preparing for that emptying right now. Every moment of stillness, every breath taken without agenda, every thought allowed to pass without being followed, all of it is preparation. The emptying is already beginning. And with the emptying, the beginner's mind waits, open, available, ready to meet tomorrow as if for the first time, which, in all the ways that matter, it is. There is something the teachers knew that they rarely said directly. They showed it in how they moved, in the quality of their attention, in the way they could be fully present in a difficult moment without being consumed by it, in the ease they carried, which was not the ease of someone who had nothing difficult in their life, but the ease of someone who had learned not to add unnecessary difficulty to what was already there. What they knew, what all the stories of tonight have been pointing at in their different ways, is that the mind has a natural resting state, not the busy state, not the planning state, not the worried state, or the excited state, or the grieving state, or the joyful state. Those are all real, all valid, all part of a full human life. But beneath them all, prior to all of them, available when they have passed, is something simpler. The natural resting state of a mind that is not in this moment required to do anything in particular. You have been in that state before, in the moments just before sleep, on the nights when sleep came easily, in the moments of deep absorption in something beautiful, in the moments between thoughts that you almost never notice because the next thought arrives so quickly, in the silence at the end of an exhale before the next breath begins. It is there. It has always been there. It is there right now, beneath whatever else is happening in the mind. The stories of tonight were not trying to create it. They were trying to thin the walls between you and what's already present. And the walls are thinner now than they were when you began. The breath is still moving, in and out, in and out, without your permission, without your management, without needing anything from you except that you not interfere. That is what the night is asking for too. Not your management, not your effort, not your will applied to the project of becoming unconscious. Just your non-interference. Just the simple act of not adding anything more to this moment. Not a thought, not a plan, not a revision of what happened, not an anticipation of what will. Just the breath, moving, just the dark, present, just the awareness, that simple, undramatic, continuous awareness, holding all of it without effort, the way the sky holds everything that passes through it without effort, without needing to try to be the sky. You don't need to try to rest. You need to try nothing. And in the trying of nothing, in the complete and genuine relinquishment of the effort to get somewhere else, rest, real rest, the deep kind, the kind the Zen mind has always known. It's here. You're in it. Good night. There were monks in the old monasteries who specialized in a practice that had no formal name. They would sit with dying people, not to teach, not to comfort in the way of words, just to sit with the same quality of presence they brought to their formal meditation practice, the same quality of complete arrival in the moment that was actually happening. And the dying people, without exception, found this more valuable than any teaching or any words of comfort that anyone else offered. When asked why, the monks who did this, asked by other monks what they were actually doing, they said different things, but the things they said pointed in the same direction. They said they were showing the dying person that it was safe to go, not by saying so, by demonstrating it, by being so fully at ease in the present moment, so genuinely unafraid of the dark that was coming, so completely without the background anxiety of a self that needed the moment to be other than what it was, that the dying person could feel it, could feel that somewhere, in someone, there was proof that the moment could be met without flinching. And in feeling that, they could let go. The monks who sat with the dying said that what they were doing was not different from what they did in daily practice. They were practicing letting go. Every moment of meditation was practice for every other moment of letting go. Every night of genuine sleep was practice. Every exhale, every ending, every moment of trusting the dark, all the same practice. all pointing at the same capacity, the capacity to release the grip completely and without reservation, and discover that what felt like falling was actually a return to something that was always there, always holding, always more solid than anything the grip was holding on to. Tonight is practice. You have been letting go all your life, every night, with every breath, with every moment of trust in the continuity that carries you from one day to the next. You are practiced at this. Your body knows the way. It is walking you there now, step by step, in the slowing of the breath and the heaviness of the limbs and the softening of the thoughts that are losing their urgency one by one. You don't need to do anything. You only need to not stop what is already happening. The letting go is already in progress. The dark is already receiving you. The bridge is already carrying you. And on the other side, not far now, not far at all, the next chapter is being prepared, full of whatever you will need, full of whoever you are becoming in the passage through the night. Rest now. The Zen mind is already quiet. The lake is already still. The bridge is already firm beneath your feet. Good night.